All right. We're gonna do this really quick. So, Voyage Adventures network plans. Objective requirements: support simultaneous VR sessions, keep latency and jitter very low, isolate different types of VR traffic, VR guests, IoT management of VLANs, centralized monitoring and management, high availabilities and easy scalability, realistic, cost-effective hardware. So for our technologies and overall approaches, for networking using Ubiquiti unified gateways, switches, APs, cameras, all of their gear. We want everything centralized so we can use the app to help manage everything. And then for computing, Dell PowerEdge VR content servers, and then just some other Dell management servers. Storage using a Synology NAS and WAN failover. Just a 5G router, GL, INET. Power racks, just UPS units and rack enclosures. Our core principles are VLAN segmentation, redundancy where needed, and central unified management. You know, the app, you want everything together so it's just easy to work with and doesn't require just tons of different, just redundant actions, you know. So kiosks, the hardware that you're using a UXC like gateway, USW like PoE. You don't need that many Ethernet ports. 1 to 2 APs depending on the kiosk, and then a 5G router for backup, and then a UPS and enclosed rack. VLANs for VR guest and management. Primary wired ISP with automatic 5G failover. You know. If we go to the next slide, you can see we have the kiosk, and we do have an ISP, right? But we have a backup 5G because malls will always be busy. Like even if the internet's down, they can't just shut down. So we have this as a backup because the kid's gonna want to come by. Mommy, can I try the VR? And then we're ready. It goes down, and then you have all the PoE, and it goes all the VR pods, and then you have all the VLANs. Full centers are a lot bigger. They're not just a kiosk in the middle of the mall. So that requires a lot more hardware. We have 2 UXC Pro gateways, 2 USD 10 GB core switches, 3 24 power Ethernet switches, 8 to 15 APs depending on how the building's set up. 2 GPU VR content servers, 1 management server, 1 NAS, 8 power Ethernet cameras. You don't want multiple cameras running through rows, and 2 UPSs and 2 racks just to store everything, make it all nice and neat. This requires a lot more. You have the internet that goes to all the switches and everything. And then I only put 3 VR pods, but realistically a full service center would have way more than 3. So this is capable of supporting way more. These are all our VLANs down here, which I will get into on the next slide. VLANs, we want everything to be manageable. We want everything to be clean. When you look at it, you can see it, understand how it works. So we have a VR pods on 10. This is for VR and content servers. And then we have our office, our staff when they're selling at the store, getting people logged in so they can use everything. And then, their Wi-Fi. The guests, they're only there for internet, like if they're on the Wi-Fi, so that's all they have. Signage is for the signages, TVs, or whatever you would use for signage. IoT sensors for the monitoring. We have environmental sensors. And cameras, we want to be able to make sure everything's safe. We can see everything, make sure nothing's going on. And then management for networks and stuff when headquarters wants to look into servers, update servers. And everything's locked down by the firewall rules. We do have QoS for performance. VR traffic is very, very susceptible to latency, jitter, and packet loss. We don't want that. We want to make sure the customer has the best experience possible. So we enforce these QoS policies. Highest priority is the VR pods. They are there to use the VR. Why would they want a bad VR experience? That's the highest priority. They're going to get everything. Medium is the staff. They still need to log people in, but it doesn't require nearly as much as VR pods. So that's the VR pods get most of it. And then, you know, for management to headquarters. Rate limited is the guest Wi-Fi. They're just there for the internet. They don't need crazy speeds just to browse. They're probably just scrolling reels on Instagram or something, waiting for their kid to finish up. Control bandwidth is the IoT sensors and signage. That's just sending data and receiving data, making sure everything's fine. It doesn't require much. Our QoS is enforced at the gateways and switches, so it makes sure it goes to everything. Yeah, that's where the firewall is enforced, if the VPN is enforced, that's where QoS is enforced, that's where it all goes down. Servers, NAS, and data flow. We do have the VR content servers. They're GPU accelerated Dell PowerEdge RTX GPUs. You know, they're really good for VR, and yeah, we have two servers, so that's good. And then you have two 10 GDS, so they can send out. And they are under the VR Pods VLAN. They want to make sure they can get to the VR Pods fast, no latency. Management servers, they're just there to monitor and log, you know. They're just under the management. And then Synology, you know, the NAS. That's where we can put our extra games, all that. And you can put your camera recordings there. If you want to record from cameras, you just create separate partitions. I think it's like a 5-bay drive, and you get a decent amount, so you know you can store everything on there. Get some decent hard drives put in there. These are server NAS data flow. See, I have it going under the VR content server, but you could have it going under both. Just partition it. This is high availability, cost, and scalability. You know, the full centers have dual gateways, dual 10 GB core, and dual WAN, dual EPS. Kiosks are wired ISP, but we do have the backup of the 5G WAN. You know, we want to make sure we have redundancy. We want to make sure everything works. And we have UPSs, so if power goes out, we can shut everything down safely and not cause errors, not corrupt things. Cost estimates, they are a little expensive. They are a little expensive, you know, $1,600 per kiosk. It's a little, but you know, when you're building these, the network is what makes it, you know. You can have all the hardware for the VR, but if there's latency, you know, the user will not be as happy. So that's what makes it. So $33,000 for a full center, give or take, you know. One might have a better setup than the other. You might not need as many APs. You might not need as many Ethernet cords. You know, one might need something else than the other. You know, we just built these for a blueprint. Scalability. You know, kiosk will always be the same. They don't really need much anything else. But like I said earlier, you can just scale centers by adding APs, getting more VRs, switches, storage. You know, all that stuff. Losing second ways. We built a secure segmented network tailored for VR, which has low latency, QoS protected VR traffic. Its security is strong and the management can be centralized. Management is centralized. High availability and realistic costs. You know, it's just what it is. And it works all the way up from small kiosk to large centers. You've seen that with how I built it. You know. These are works cited, and then, yeah, thank you.